It's Eagles and it's Super Bowl. I mean, what else is the conversation going to be? Look, I triggered some people last night, but it got me thinking. The Eagles do not panic as an organization ever, whenever the going gets tough, on a weekly basis, a yearly basis, as an organization basis. And we're going to tie that into the Sean Payton news. Also, breaking news: Tom Brady just announced his retirement again 10 minutes ago. We have the great Ed Kracz from Sports Illustrated joining us at 9 a.m. Sit back, relax, trending in the AM starts in 30 seconds.
Holding gets around in front.
And Philadelphia has it.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. We're live, as always, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow on all social media platforms. Do me that favor and hit that like and the subscribe button. Head over to the DSM Media YouTube page as we continue our trek to 800 subscribers. Slowly but surely getting there. I greatly appreciate that. It's also the best place to get interactive with the show. And today's the day you're going to want to get interactive with the show. Got some interesting conversations to have. We got the great Ed Kracz joining us later in the program. So head over there to drop your comments, your thoughts, your questions, anything that you want to talk about, Eagles, Super Bowl related, because Jason, as always, another day, and we are just going to keep talking to. Normally you get a little, like if we talk Phillies too many days in a row, or Sixers too many days in a row, or Eagles even too many days in a row, you're like, it gets a little stale. But talking Eagles in the Super Bowl, there's no way for 2 weeks that this conversation is going to get stale.
Absolutely not. I mean, there's too many storylines on both sides, you know? So
absolutely. So let's get it out. Let's get it out of the way first and foremost. I want to talk about the Eagles organization not panicking and how that relates to the whole Sean Payton going to the Broncos to be their new head coach situation. But real quick, 2 minutes. Tom Brady, literally, you didn't even know about it. I was playing the video while you were joining the backstage studio. He announced his retirement again. This time it sounds like it's official. Do you truly believe that this is officially official and there's going to be no changing of the mind of Tom Brady? He is officially retired as a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, this time I do. I mean, I actually thought last time it was, but I think this time I think he's kind of just – I think he's at the point in his life where he wants to reset and figure out life after football. I mean, he really doesn't have to prove anything else. I mean, he's already proven that he is the GOAT. I mean, I get he has an intense his intensity is, you know, level 10 at all times, and he's always trying to kind of prove something else. But I think sometimes you got to realize, like, when your body's starting to break down, and I don't think he necessarily had a bad season, but football is a team sport, and Tampa Bay kind of went backwards as far as, like, you know, the talent level around him was not where it needed to be. Their offensive line kind of went backwards. Their defense wasn't as good this year, and they had a lot of holes. So I think he realizes, like, if he's really going to win a Super Bowl, there's only one other way to do it. Like, he would have to, like, go to a team that's already ready to win, and I think he's just done with that. And I think also the whole divorce thing, like, yeah, he's divorced and now he can focus on himself. But I think his kids are still very important to him.
And they're still young enough where there's a lot to still be involved with them. I'm just going to leave it at this. You know, I'll say this as an honor to be able to watch him play. We hated him because he was a Patriot and beat us in the first Super Bowl. We took him in the second. You know, it was an honor. Anybody in our age frame in the mid to late 40s, we've gotten to watch Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, and Barry Bonds. I'm going to use those three names. Three of the greatest of all time, and in each of their respective sports. And it's an honor to be able to say that we've gotten to watch the entirety of Tom Brady's career as grown adults to be able to appreciate it. And whereas maybe like Michael Jordan's early part of his career, we didn't get to appreciate it as much. But, you know, I always been taught, you know, you appreciate greatness whether you like him or not. And Tom Brady, like you said, he's the GOAT. There's nobody better than Tom Brady at the quarterback position ever. And there's nobody better than Tom Brady probably in the history of football. So tip of the cap to him.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same sentiments. Couldn't have put it better. I think he is the GOAT, and anybody that argues that he's not, like, you really haven't watched what he's been able to accomplish. And the crazy thing is like Tom Brady was called back in the day a system quarterback in the beginning of his career, and but the bottom line is the most important stat on the stat board is wins, and he's won more games than anybody. He has more Super Bowl rings than anybody, and he's done things at the quarterback position that many people would just dream about. So yes, tip of the cap. I don't like Tom Brady. Let me rephrase that. I don't like his arrogance.
Right.
I don't think he's I don't think he's the nicest person in the world, but I respect Tom Brady, and I fully understand the magnitude of how great he is. So
All right. Well, let's move on from that, because that wasn't even part of the show today. I mean, maybe we'll talk more Tom Brady as the week goes on and the weeks go on and the off season. But I want to bring up a conversation that we have to have here, and it relates to the whole Sean Payton news. So Sean Payton, former Saints coach who's been in the broadcast booth for a few years now, is coming out of retirement to coach the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos have traded their number 1 overall pick this year. I think it's the 29th pick in this draft, first-round pick, and they've traded the second and third-round picks that they own next year to bring Sean Payton in, to pair him up with Russell Wilson, to take over the disaster that was Nathaniel Hackett, trying to coach that, Broncos team last year. And it got me thinking. It's a panic move by the Broncos. Now, Nathaniel Hackett was a bad hire. I get that. But what has Sean Payton done that makes him this special guy that you're going to trade? You've already traded half your assets for the next 3 years for Russell Wilson. Now you're trading even more assets to bring in Sean Payton. And instead of doing your due diligence, going out and interviewing all these, first and foremost, they interviewed a bunch of guys. Guys like D'Amico Ryan turned the job down because that's what that organization's about. They're in panic mode. They're in rush mode. No time to do anything. Plus, you got the Russell Wilson. Is he washed up or not? Hanging over your head. No one wanted the job. So they go out and they panicked, and they brought in Sean Payton. We'll get to Sean Payton in a second. But that's the difference between the Eagles organization and other organizations. The Eagles organization, we've been praising Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie, the gold standard, as so to say. We've called them that and praised them for the last week or so now. And the thing is, they have had their lumps. They had the Andy Reid thing fall apart. They had the Chip Kelly debacle. They had a Super Bowl winning quarterback, the guy that, or coach, the guy that won your organization their first Super Bowl, and they had to let him go. They had a franchise quarterback. They paid him a lot of money. It failed. They had to move on. But every single time something bad happened, they didn't panic and make a rash decision. They sat back. They thought about it, interviewed lots of candidates. They brought in Doug Peterson. They brought in Nick Sirianni, not the most popular name. They, had a backup plan. They didn't rush and trade Jalen Hurts or Carson Wentz. They were patient and didn't react. They waited till the right opportunity to get the right picks. Everything the Eagles do is patient and well thought out by a lot of minds, business and football minds. And I think that is part of what makes them such a great organization, is that they're patient and they don't react, rashly. They're patient. They're proactive to an extent. And I think that is something that everyone talks about, how great the organization is because they've made some great trades or they've picked the right coaches. But it's because of their patience, their due diligence, that makes them such a great organization. Do you agree with that, or am I on to something here?
Yeah, actually, I do agree, Phil. I think I look at Denver, and they've had John Elway. Of course, they had a long lull of really non-star quarterbacks. I know they had the period where they had Tim Tebow.
Hey, Jake the Snake Plumber. Come on. Jake the Snake, man.
And then obviously Peyton Manning went there at the end of his career and, obviously to try to win a Super Bowl. But I think you're right. I think the difference between the Eagles is the Eagles always do it smart, yet they kind of use a mixture. They sign free agents, but they also draft. And I know we've criticized Howie Roseman in the past in his drafts. And, yeah, he made some mistakes. Obviously, Justin Jefferson's the number one that everyone always goes back to. But, he's also made a lot of good ones. I mean, Jalen Hurts, to me, is probably now you have to look at that as being one of the biggest steals ever. To be able to get Jalen Hurts at the 53rd pick in a draft when you already had Carson Wentz, which tells me that the organization in some senses already had an idea that Carson Wentz wasn't the answer. Because realistically, why would they have drafted Jalen Hurts there? Yeah, you could say it was an insurance policy.
Because they value that they're proactive with their players. They're proactive knowing that they might that the backup quarterback position is extremely valuable. That I think that was part. It wasn't because they kind of knew Carson wasn't the guy. They knew that, well, Carson gets hurt, we got to have a backup. Quarterbacks get hurt, we've got to have a viable option. And if that viable option outplays Carson, then hey, even better to us.
Yeah, something tells me they knew though. I think they knew Carson wasn't a leader. I think they already knew.
Right.
And I honestly, I listened to an interview from Sirianni last night, and he was really excited. His tone got really excited when they talked about Kenny Gainwell.
Right.
And he was saying how Howie Roseman called him and was like, "Yo, this kid Kenny, he's really good." And he said him and Howie spent 3 hours watching film together that night when he called him. So it just seems like they're very
Well, here's another example. Kenny Gainwell, that's being proactive, having the backup plan to Miles Sanders ready. Landon Dickerson, you drafted Kelsey's replacement 2 years ago. Instead of panicking when Kelsey decided to come back, they found another role for Landon Dickerson, and then Renton drafted Cam Jurgens to replace, Jason Kelsey in the future. They just keep they just keep having a plan, and they don't overreact and panic. Because let me tell you something, this whole Denver Broncos Sean Payton thing, to me, I put out a tweet yesterday evening, and it blew up with bots and people coming at me, and whatever. I'm used to it. And people misunderstood me. It wasn't that I was saying Sean Payton is not a good coach. What I'm saying is Sean Payton is putting this upper echelon of the top tier, the Andy Reid, the Bill Belichick tier of coaches. He's not up there. 15 years, he coached 15 years in New Orleans. He had 16 years there, but 1 year he was fully suspended. So in 15 years, he made and won one Super Bowl. Never made the Super Bowl again. I don't even know how many championship games he made. Not many. He has a 9-8 playoff record, and 6 years of those 15, he had sub 10 wins. So the years he did not have Drew Brees, he failed. And he went, and as soon as Drew Brees retired, he tried. He's like, I can't win without Drew Brees. Packed his bag and went home. And now he's only coming out of retirement because there's a team with a guy by the name of Russell Wilson that needs a coach who's Russell Wilson, supposed to be that, elite level type quarterback. The Broncos are panicking. It bombed big time last year with Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett. There's no doubt about it. It was a complete and total blow up there. But instead of being patient this offseason, trying to find a way to make it work, they're just rashly going out and dumping more. You have Russell Wilson in that albatross of a contract you extended him to. You need draft picks. You need young players. You need talent on that team. But now you've traded away 3 more draft picks, including your first-round pick this year, to go get a coach. Who's he going to coach? Basically the same team they had last year, which was terrible. So if Sean Payton was this mastermind offensive genius, like he's regarded as, you would think he would have at least more Super Bowl appearances. He would have had a better overall record. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I'm just trying to bring him down to the proper level, which is he's a good coach, not an elite coach.
I mean, you would think that the fact of what happened to Denver, everything that happened in this season after making those, this big decisions to get Russell Wilson and the failures that happened, you're right. They should be patient instead of going and getting a coach that, in my opinion, is overrated. I think Sean Payton is overrated. I think that's what that word means. He's being put on a pedestal, but he hasn't really backed it up other than, as you said, the one Super Bowl with Drew Brees. And Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. We get
one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and one Super Bowl with the best quarterback.
But football's a team sport, and you got to look at the Broncos as a whole organization and where they're at. I mean, yeah, they have a good running back. They drafted Javonte Williams, very young, so they're set there. I mean, for success for the future. They have decent wide receivers. They don't have great wide receivers. They have
their wide receivers.
They're good.
They're good.
They're not great.
Yeah.
Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. They have the guy that got hurt he's out for the year. He was kind of an underrated. He reminds me of like Tyler Lockett, that kind of wide. I can't.
They have Jeudy. They have Timothy Patrick.
That's it. Yeah, Patrick
got KJ Hamler. They've got some good names over there.
They got wide receivers, but like their offensive line's not good.
Their defense is not what it used to be.
Their defense was supposed to be an upper echelon defense, but it wasn't like on that level this year.
Right.
So I agree with you. I think that they're just trying to kind of, have a quick fix as opposed to saying, you know what, let's reset. Maybe Russell Wilson. Okay, we can't get rid of Russell Wilson, but let's build around him. Let's go sign a good free agent wide receiver. Let's go sign a good offensive line.
Go get a good young quarterback offensive mind that's new and innovative to help lead this offense. I'm trying to keep these stories and these conversations related to the Eagles. And what I'm thinking is you had the first Super Bowl winning head coach here in Doug Peterson. They made the playoffs 2 more years after that. They didn't get back to the pinnacle. That's fine. 2020 was an absolute disaster, obviously. I don't even want to get into what happened between Doug Peterson, Howie Roseman, and Carson Wentz. Whatever reason, your first Super Bowl winning head coach is gone 3 years after he wins a Super Bowl. It's unheard of. But what do the Eagles do? They go out and they do their due diligence. They interview everybody. You had, right before we hired Nick Sirianni, you had McDaniels from the Patriots offensive coordinator in here. And we could have panicked. We could have rushed and brought him in and hired him because he had the name recognition value. But we didn't. We were patient. We bring in Nick Sirianni. Now, I'm not saying there was a guarantee that Nick Sirianni was going to be the right guy, but the Eagles did not make that rash decision overpaying McDaniels, and McDaniels had to go back to the Patriots for another year. And then you see what he did in Oakland. He bombed in Oakland this year. He didn't get fired, but he bombed in Oakland. And he had Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, Darren. He had elite weapons all around him. So, the Eagles were patient. Where the Broncos, we lost out on D'Amico Ryan. Let's go trade everything we got to get Sean Payton here. That's the difference between a well-run organization and a poor-run organization.
If Denver was smart, they would try to go after Steichen or Brian Johnson.
Brian Johnson would be he would. I don't know if he's ready for a head coaching position.
No, but I mean,
let's not beat around the bush here. Andy Reid was a quarterback coach when we hired him to be our head coach. He had no offensive coordinator, experience at that point. So, I mean, it's not unheard of to hire a quarterback's coach. Or wasn't John Harbaugh? Wasn't he a special teams coach when he was hired by Baltimore? So
I'm just saying, any team that's in need of either a quarterback whisperer or somebody that's going to help a team's offense that stuttered should be looking at the Eagles because of the Jalen Hurts example. I mean, that to me alone.
Well, see, and there's another term on the panicking because you've got great head coaches or coordinators and assistant coaches playing or coaching in the Super Bowl, both on the Chiefs and on the Eagles. But a lot of teams are filling their positions now instead of waiting till after the Super Bowl when you could officially hire or finish the interview process with these guys. What's the rush? If you're not hiring a GM, if you're not worried about your scouts going to the combines and the workouts right now, just wait. Because that's the difference between panicking and not panicking. I mean, on a side note, you brought up Justin Jefferson and the Howie Roseman thing. I saw an interesting joke on social media yesterday. Just think, missing Justin Jefferson for Jalen Reagor. Do you know what domino effect that started? Because that's the start of Carson Wentz failing. If you just draft Justin Jefferson, maybe you don't draft Jalen Hurts in the second round. If you draft Justin Jefferson, Carson Wentz might not fail enough to get fired, and he still might be our quarterback. the domino effect of what the Carson or the Justin Jefferson miss started actually is what may have put us in the position we are right now. So if anything, we may owe Jalen Reagor a little. Oh, the sound effect didn't work. There it goes. There it goes. Little round of applause for Jalen Reagor being the worst good pick we've ever made.
Well, I mean, listen, Howie Roseman fixed it by drafting Devonta Smith and then signing A.J.
You don't
Brown.
have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown if you drafted Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, and
Are
listen,
we in the Super Bowl right now? Are we in the Super Bowl right now with Justin Jefferson and Carson Wentz? We're not.
Justin Jefferson is definitely the best. You know, I look at Justin Jefferson long term. He's so young, and what he's done already, he's the best wide receiver in the NFL, like for a long time. But the drop off between him and A.J. Brown is not as big as the drop off between Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz. So I'll take that any day of the week.
But then again, this whole Justin Jefferson what if, this Jalen Hurts what if, Jalen Reagor what if, again, the Eagles organization did not panic. It was obvious from day one in camp that year that Howie Roseman made a drastic mistake, Reagor over Justin Jefferson. What did Jeffrey Lurie do? He didn't panic. Other organizations would have panicked, fired their GM over that. There's no panic in the Eagles organization. That's why you have the constant success long-term that this organization has had. Like I said last week, only twice since Jeffrey Lurie has owned this team have we missed the playoffs 3 times in a row. And it's because there's no panic. There's always a way to fix every mistake to an extent. And I think that, we could talk about, all the good this organization has done, but the lack of panic. I think it's a really, really important thing for any sports franchise, the lack of a panic, to make logical decisions, think it out, talk it out, get your business people involved, get your sports people involved, get your analytics people involved, figure out the right direction, and take your time getting there. You don't need that harsh, fast overreaction. Because let me be honest, this Denver situation, it's going to blow up. There's no way Sean Payton is going to instantly fix Russell Wilson and that team that's void of massive talent. They're going to be there. First off, why would you want to come out of retirement to go to the AFC West, where you've got Patrick Mahomes, you've got Justin Herbert, 2 great quarterbacks you're going to have to face every single year, twice a year. The Chiefs are still going to own that division. So just bringing in Sean Payton and trading all those assets, you're trying to make a rash, quick decision that's remember a couple months ago I talked about timing in sports? It's bad timing. You're going all in with Russell Wilson and Sean Payton at the worst possible time. So you're making a rash decision at the bad timing. I don't even know why you'd want to go to Denver at this point.
So I'll go one step further than what you said. Like, it's not just about teams not panicking and organizations not panicking. It's also organizations taking a approach that you make decisions regardless of the consequences. You're not scared to make difficult decisions, like moving on for Peterson that quick, moving on for Carson Wentz. A lot of teams would have not done that. A lot of teams would have said, well, let's just keep Wentz and try to make it work. The Eagles actually, they said, you know what? We made a mistake. Let's fix it. So, yeah, it's not panicking, but it's also making difficult decisions that sometimes fans might not be happy about and not care. Because at the end of the day, they have a plan. It's having a plan, I think, that's pretty, just as important as not panicking. Having a plan, going out and executing that plan. That's why we're in the Super Bowl, because, how many teams can do a rebuild that quick? And it really was a rebuild because there's only 4 guys left from 2017.
I think that's a fair point because I keep calling it a retool. But no, it really is a rebuild because literally in 6 years, there's only 4 guys left. And that's kind of insane to think about. Yeah. But you have that patience. It's hiring the right guy to be the leader of your team. And Nick Sirianni, obviously, hindsight's 2020, was obviously the right pick. But they did their due diligence. They were patient. They didn't make we've got the big name in here. Let's just hire him right on the spot. Which you do see that in the coaching interviews when that happens, sometimes coaches go in, they wow the coach or the GM and the owner. They're like, oh, we don't want them to leave the building without a contract in hand. That's not doing your due diligence. And you see it yesterday. This Eagles team, for as good as they are, they're a very young and inexperienced team. The organization as a whole. You got the 4 guys that were here in 2017, but for the most part, there's very little experience on this team. But then you listen to Nick Sirianni talk yesterday at his first press conference of the week, and there's just a calm about him. His demeanor hasn't changed. He's staying exactly the same level-headed, leader that he's been since day one here. And making the right decision on the coach by not making that rash decision, you end up in the situation where you are right now. Even if we weren't in the Super Bowl, if we had lost last week or something like that, we'd still be saying Nick Sirianni, the level-headedness of him, the never getting too overly excited or too, down. That translates to the players really well. And I think there's a key part right there too, that they made the right decision by being patient, but also that being patient has set them up now where they're in the big moment and they've got a guy that's just level. Nothing too high, nothing too low.
You're talking about Sirianni, right?
Yeah.
And Hurts.
Oh yeah, he didn't speak yesterday. You listen to Nick Sirianni talk yesterday in his press conference, and the moment's not too big for him, and the moment's not too, he's not going to get out of control, and he's not going to change who he is at this point. He's going to continue to stay the same way. You see some coaches, they get to the Super Bowl for the first time, they get to that big moment, the lights are on you, the lights are the brightest. There's more interviews and more reporters than ever before trying to get a piece of you, and it's just same old Nick Sirianni. Nothing has changed whatsoever. We talked about it with Jalen Hurts finally cracking a smile on Sunday. There'll be plenty of time to celebrate after the season's over, to reflect on how great this season was, win or lose on Super Bowl Sunday. Right now, in the moment, Nick Sirianni's staying, and that translates to the players. That the players see that their coach is calm. They see that their coach is collected, and they're like, okay, well, if he's calm and collected, we're good. We can be calm and collected. We don't have to freak out because he's not freaking out. And nobody would, quote unquote, freak out. But you can kind of sense if somebody's got nervous energy. And you don't see that with Nick Sirianni. Nice and level, nice and even keeled the entire way. And that and how it translates to the players is something that could, push you over that. I mean, going up against Andy Reid in the similar situation, Andy Reid's not going to, get too overexcited or too underexcited. The energy will stay the same. So we're going up against a Chiefs team that's led by a similar style coach in the sense where he doesn't let the emotions get the better of him. But it's really good for our team, our young team that doesn't have that experience, to see a leader that isn't in panic mode whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I love Nick Sirianni. I just think that we have I think we have the perfect coach for the city.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, I heard him yesterday, talking, and he was saying that, they asked him about that. They asked him about, how is he fitting in Philly? And he said that he feels like he belongs here. He like what he is embodies what the Philly attitude embodies. And it's almost like he said, like, it's almost like he was born here. That's because that's who he is. He's Philly.
Right.
And I just think it's awesome because everything just happens for a reason. And, you could say that it's luck that we got him, or, that anybody could be in this situation, any team. But to me, I think it's the perfect example of what you're saying, a team that actually does its due diligence and takes the time to kind of make sure they're making the right decision before they pull the trigger.
I mean, due diligence, that's how you got Jalen Hurts here. Jalen Hurts was not projected to be a second-round quarterback. Jalen Hurts was not – I mean, they could have easily outbid the Broncos for Russell Wilson. Yeah, I mean, maybe Russell Wilson didn't want to come here, whatever. I mean, that's another subject. They could have made a rash decision after 1 year of Jalen Hurts. They didn't. They did their due diligence, and they knew what they had there. We're going to reset here real quick because we got our guest joining us here. Again, this is Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. We've got my man, Ed Kracz, one of the best on the beat there covering the Eagles. Good morning, Ed. How you doing today?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, good morning. How's everybody?
We're doing fantastic. I mean, this is, when you do a show every day, sometimes the stories can get repetitive, the conversation can get repetitive. But when the Eagles are in the Super Bowl, I don't care. It's a joy to wake up every morning when the Eagles are in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, is this the new norm that Doug Peterson talked about when they won in 2017? Is this what he envisioned going back every 5 years or so? Listen, Eagles fans will take that, right?
We finally have the gold standard that was talked about years ago here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, how about that too? Yeah, all these little sayings that trickled out when the team was struggling along, and here we are, kind of living the dream, so to speak.
So before we I have a couple questions for you about the Eagles, and we're going to get to that in a second. But I'm actually really curious about something for you here. You've been covering the Eagles now full time for about 12, 13 years now.
Yeah.
Reaching the Super Bowl for a guy that covers reaching the Super Bowl as a reporter, this is actually a pretty big deal, I think, for you too, right? And all the guys that are on the beat. I mean, is it exciting for you to be able to say, yeah, my team, they're there. I get to cover a Super Bowl winning or Super Bowl appearing team. It's a big deal for you guys as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is my third one. I was actually like the third guy back in 2005 when they went to Jacksonville. I was the A1 guy, in newspaper parlance. I was writing the front page stories. And, of course, I was there in Minnesota. And it's an exciting environment, that's for sure. And to be able to hear those Eagles fans that come into town doing the Eagles chants all over the place is always fun and exciting for me to hear. And yeah, I mean, when you cover a team all year long and you're in that locker room, pretty much every day for the last, since the end of July, you develop some relationships with players and you're happy for them. There's no doubt. Like, I'll just mention one guy, Robert Quinn. I know, he doesn't get a lot of love, hasn't really done much since being acquired, but I've talked to Robert quite a bit, and I'll tell you what, he was really emotional after they won that game on Sunday, just talking about patience and endurance and how it's taken him this long, and just really overcome with emotion. Very grateful. He's such a good, a good person off the field, like a lot of these guys are. And we all, a lot of people only see them in their helmets and they look at their numbers, but you develop relationships. So yeah, it's exciting, from that standpoint for sure. To see guys that you've built relationships with have this kind of success.
Yeah, it's an extra 2 more weeks on the road for you, and a little bit more work, but it's kind of like it's a payoff for them making it, but it's also a payoff for you to get to experience the Super Bowl there.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, like you mentioned. Yeah, but I'm not going to complain. I mean, there are other jobs you could have that you might not like, and I do love what I do. I've been doing it for 30 plus years. Covered a lot of different things, not just Super Bowls, but yeah, it's work, but it's a labor of love, so to speak.
Yeah. So let's talk about this team a little bit here. And what we've been talking about a lot so far this week is just the leadership at the top of this team. Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, even, because I don't think Jeffrey Lurie gets enough credit for how he's, handled this organization over the last 30 years. And, with the news of Sean Payton yesterday, getting traded to the Broncos and all that, I kind of been talking about how that was kind of like a panic move by the Broncos to an extent, trading so much to bring in a guy versus the Eagles organization and how patient they are with doing their due diligence, everything, running a proper organization. And that's where you get a guy like Nick Sirianni. I was watching yesterday's press conference, and there was, for a guy with as little experience as he has, very even keeled. He's not getting too emotionally excited, never too down, and that translates to the players a lot, especially a very young team that the Eagles have. So talk about Nick Sirianni and how he's been able to, keep the emotions in check through this ride here.
Yeah, I mean, hasn't he come a long way? Remember his introductory presser just a couple of years ago, how, he kind of stumbled his way through that. And, he showed his players clips of that to say, hey, look, we're getting better. We can all get better. This is where I started and this is where I am now. So that's a good teaching tape point for him. He talks about these teaching tapes he puts together. So, yeah, I think that this team is a reflection of that personality of Nick Sirianni, which, he's a pretty fiery guy. He's definitely a player's coach. He'll defend his players he'll go out on the field and scream at the other sideline like we've seen him do to defend his players. So, I think he's just been that kind of influence that they know he has their back, and they're going to play for him. He talks a lot about, and he talked about this in the opening press conference, his 5 core principles, and we all kind of thought, well, that seems like kind of pie in the sky type stuff. But, it's really true, the connection that he has these players make. So they're all pulling from the same side of the rope, if you will. They all want to play for each other, the guy that's next to them in the locker, on the field, wherever. And then the accountability, taking accountability for things. If things go wrong, take ownership of it, okay, and learn from it and move on, and don't make the same mistake again. I mean, these are all, foundations that he's kind of built in the locker room, and that's helped establish the culture that when Howie Roseman goes out and builds this roster, which, you can't discount what he did. Obviously, he brought in all this terrific talent, but talent alone doesn't guarantee wins. You have to have the coaching staff in place with that culture already established, and then you have to make it all work. And Nick's been able to do that. We've seen teams with great talent before that haven't lived up to that talent. But Nick has them, playing to the level of their ability. He's got a good staff around him. They're all teachers. They're all very good at explaining how they want the game plan to look. And the players have, kind of taken that and run with it.
I think I was going to ask you something about Howie Roseman, but you mentioned that the talent alone doesn't win. And I think there's a lot of people that say that Jonathan Gannon has had an improved defense solely because more talent was brought in. And I don't think enough credit has been given to Nick Sirianni's assistant there, Jonathan Gannon, running that defense. Just the defense, the talent alone wouldn't make that the top defense that it is. Jonathan Gannon had to put the right game plans, the right players in the right places and stuff like that. And you talk about Nick Sirianni. I mean, not only does he stand up for his players, he stood up a week or two ago for his, Jonathan Gannon as well.
Right.
Has Jonathan Gannon's hate been a little overblown? Or the hatred for Jonathan Gannon been a little overblown?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I said last year when people were giving him a rough ride, I'm like, I don't think he has, the personnel in the building that he wants to be able to do what he wants to do. And, we've asked Jonathan Gannon about that. And of course, he's not going to make any excuses. He's not going to say, yeah, I needed to get my guys in here to succeed. He's not going to say that. But in my opinion, he needed to have the players in the building to be able to operate the way he wants this defense to operate. And, he's been able to do that. And I don't quite understand why fans just don't like the guy for whatever reason. Maybe it's left over from last year when the defense did struggle at times. Maybe they don't play enough, different schemes, or they don't blitz enough. But, I just don't know how you can argue with a defense that's ranked number 1 against the pass after the regular season. They've held 2 playoff opponents to a total of 14 points. They have a defensive line that him and Tracy Rocker. And again, he has good assistants just like Nick does on the offensive side of the ball. But that defensive line, 70 sacks in the regular season, another, 8 in the playoffs, 78 sacks. Just the way they were able to rotate and not miss a beat, and to understand the rotation like Gannon does. I mean, I don't get it. I really don't. Why there is.
I think a lot of the Jonathan Gannon hate comes from the people realizing that Jimmy John, there's still the people that are focused on, 30 years ago in Jimmy Johnson's blitz heavy defense. And they think that that's the only way to play defense in the NFL. And it's not. You got to evolve with the times. And Jonathan Gannon, Nick Sirianni, this team has evolved with the times, on their defensive side of the football.
That's absolutely right. And even Jim Schwartz didn't get a lot of love, even when they won the Super Bowl, his defense gave up 500 plus yards to Tom Brady. I mean, they won the game. I mean, come on. What more do you want? Just win the game, no matter what it looks like.
We talked about Nick Sirianni. I was going to go back to Howie Roseman now and the panic and that's, the thread today has been not panicking. You had a total disaster happen here in 2020 between Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz, Howie Roseman. And we talked about Nick Sirianni, but it's Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie not panicking in this city when the going gets tough. And that's why this team constantly rebuilds, constantly gets back to the top of the league, because the leaders at the top of this organization have that steady hand as well. They don't overreact to any bad situation. It's all right. Well, let's learn from our mistakes and let's fix those mistakes. And Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie need just as much credit given to them as we're given to Nick Sirianni Jalen Hurts for the season that they're having?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's all about stability, and this organization seems to have it, and you have to give Jeffrey Lurie credit for that. You're right; he doesn't overreact, in a bad situation. But when there is a bad situation, he acts quickly, like he did with Chip Kelly. Not even letting him finish out the year back in 2015, fired him with one game to go. But it starts with him, and I think every organization to have success needs that stability. And listen, I'm guilty of it too. Like back in 2020, everybody's like, oh my gosh, how does Howie Roseman keep his job when he's already been through 2 head coaches that he's hired? This roster is devoid of a lot of talent. But shame on me, shame on everyone for thinking that, right? Because, Howie and that stability that Lurie harps and preaches has paid off. And, Howie's done a really good job, obviously. I mean, they tried to keep that Super Bowl window open after 2017 for as long as they could. They went back to the playoffs 2 straight years afterward. They went to the divisional round in 18, and then 19, Carson Wentz gets the concussion and he gets hurt. And then 2020, they start building some draft picks. The more draft picks you have, the greater you can miss too, like you're not going to hit every draft pick, but if you have 10 of them, that increases your hit rate too. So, Howie's done a good job, not only in signing free agents and bringing talent in here, but, managing the cap, which they've been up against it the last couple of years, and he's found a way to get it done. And then in drafting, him and his staff have done a good job bringing in, Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, obviously Jalen Hurts, Kenny Gainwell. I mean, they've done a good job bringing talent in here. Jordan Davis this past year. And, these are guys that are going to play a role, obviously, going forward, with the foundation of this team. And Howie gets a lot of credit. He should get a lot of credit for that. He was the executive of the year by the Pro Football Writers. I'm assuming Sporting News will be giving out their executive of the year award to Howie as well. But yeah, you're right, though. It starts at the top with Lurie. Lurie provides the stability, and doesn't, panic if there's a bad move that's made, like Eagles drafting Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. They've overcome that. So, he doesn't panic when there's one bad move. He likes to have that stability in place and gives guys a chance to breathe and grow and feel comfortable with the decisions they make, good or bad.
I mean, we were just joking right before you joined the show that if Justin Jefferson was the pick, we might not be where we're at right now. We still might have Carson Wentz. We wouldn't have Devontae Smith. We might not have A.J. Brown. It was a good miss because it turned into being where we're at this point.
Right. But they reacted well to it, right? I mean, they did a good job of kind of going on the fly, and okay, well, they moved on from Reagor. All right, we know he's not the guy, and then they went out and did that stuff. So yeah, that you're right. I mean, who knows?
It's having, I always say that Jeffrey Lurie has given Howie Roseman the benefit of the doubt to, all right, you make a mistake, learn from it. Now, if you screw up enough times in a row, yeah, maybe we'll talk about moving on from you. But you've got my confidence to keep this organization on that right trend.
Yeah, a lot of resilience to be able to bounce back from that and identify your mistake and move on from it. So, kudos to the organization from the top to Howie to his staff to Nick and then into the locker room.
All right, so to the Super Bowl game real quick before we wrap this up. Obviously, the Eagles fan base is super pumped, super hyped. There's a lot of, we've got this going around. Everybody's very confident going into it. But it is the Kansas City Chiefs. It is Patrick Mahomes. It's Andy Reid. Legends already. If you looking ahead to this game in, 10 days from now, what would be your biggest area of concern for either the Eagles or their opponents? What are you looking at is going to be one of the things that, really, really test this Eagles organization?
Well, I mean, first of all, I love this matchup. I'm glad it's the Chiefs and not the Bengals. Even, I'm not sure who's the easier matchup, personnel wise, but I just love the, Kelsey brothers playing against each other. Obviously Andy Reid's a big story, but, there's just a lot of good storylines that will start to flesh out here as these days pass on. But, concern wise, I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes is a concern. If you rank your top 10 players in this Super Bowl, you can make a case for Jalen Hurts, of course, but I think Patrick Mahomes is probably the best player in the Super Bowl when he's got a great tight end, Travis Kelce. You know, they love to feed him the ball. But to me, you know, the Chiefs aren't really they're top heavy in talent. You know, they have Kelce, Mahomes. Chris Jones is going to be a beast. That's probably a concern trying to block him. But you know, the Eagles, I think, have more talent on the roster, you know, than the Chiefs have. They're a little bit more, you know, they're deeper, I should say. So I don't really have a lot of concerns other than blocking Chris Jones and containing Patrick Mahomes. And, you know, when I was in Minnesota for that Super Bowl, I thought there's no way. Every day I walked into the Mall of America where the media center was, and they had these 2 life-size banners of Nick Foles and Tom Brady hanging down from the top of the concourse down like 4 stories, these huge. And every day I'm like, there's just no way Nick Foles is going to hang with Tom Brady. They're going to lose this game. And I was wrong, obviously. And now I kind of feel like I feel a little confident that the Eagles can win this game. And I'm like, maybe that's the wrong attitude to have.
That's why I phrased the question like, what are your concerns? Because that's all we've been talking about so far, how confident we are.
Yeah.
I'm not used to having that pre-game confidence, you know, for any Philadelphia sports team. And I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm missing something. That's why I phrased it the way I did. Like, am I missing something? You know,
I feel the same way, Phil. I mean, I'm like, you know, I'm still looking at this matchup and I'm trying to find reasons to think like, okay, maybe am I too overconfident here? But you know, listen, this has been a really special season for the Eagles when you look at what they've done. 2 receivers over 1,000 yards, Jalen Hurts with, you know, 15 rushing touchdowns. I mean, all these records, the sacks. I mean, it's just been a terrific journey. And to me, the Eagles are the better team. And, you know, it's amazing, like you said, to say that because you're used to thinking of, you know, when's the sky going to fall here? But I just feel like the Eagles have a better team. And, you know, whether they're the better team on Super Bowl Sunday, we'll see. But I do have confidence, just like you, going into this thing.
So, Ed, this is Ed Kracz again, SI Eagles Today. What's your schedule like? When you're heading out to Arizona, and you mentioned Minnesota, Arizona's a much better place, you know, to get assigned to go to cover a Super Bowl than Minnesota, I'm sure. Hopefully you pack some sunscreen for that.
For my dome, yeah. You know what? I mean, Jacksonville was cold too in 2005. It was chilly that week in Jacksonville. And Minnesota, of course, I think the high that week was like 3 degrees. So, yeah, this will be a welcome change to go to a warm climate. But I'm heading out Tuesday morning. I have an early flight. I get in Arizona about 9 a.m. and then, you know, then the 12, 13, 14-hour days start to unfold. But yeah, I'm heading out Tuesday and I'm coming back the following Tuesday. So
awesome. I greatly appreciate just a few minutes of your time this morning. Yeah. I'm glad that you kind of gave me like, all right, I'm not the only one that's questioning this overconfidence feeling that we're all having right now.
Yeah, it's 10 days and, you know, maybe I'll find a reason to kind of, you know, dampen that enthusiasm or that confidence. But now I just don't see it. And I'm with you, man. And probably a lot of other people that
you heard it here first. Ed Kracz is picking the Eagles to win. It's not his official prediction, but it's his official prediction right here.
Right. My unofficial official prediction. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
good luck on the travels this weekend. And yeah, I mean, continue doing the great work. I greatly, thoroughly appreciate all your articles. You're one of the top 2 guys that I follow and read every single article that you put out there. So,
man, I appreciate that.
There, my man.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that, Phil. Thanks.
Right.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Day, right?
Thank you.
Thanks. That was Ed Kracz, SI now, Eagles now. That was fun. I mean, first and foremost, before we get into what he had to say there, Jason, it's great to know that a guy that's a beat reporter that's covering the team day in and day out, that, like he said, has connections with this team, but has to be an unbiased journalist, is as confident as us fans are going into this game.
I mean, listen, dude, I've been talking about it for a while, and I keep saying that this team really is great. And I think as Philly fans, we're trained to not kind of believe things, like, because we're so used to, you know, having high expectations and having them shattered. It's just part of why, you know, they always said the term Negadelphia. Like, well, that didn't just generate. That came, you know, over time of like having these moments where you're like, oh my God, like we're going to win and have these expectations and getting them beat. But the bottom line is, if you look up and down the rosters, like the Eagles are the better roster. I mean, and you can make an argument. You could say Pat Mahomes is better than Jalen Hurts. I get that. That's fair. I mean, he's been in the league longer. He has he's won a Super Bowl already. He's been in multiple Super Bowls. He's been doing it a lot longer. But what we can say is Jalen Hurts can hang with Pat Mahomes, and that's all you need when you get into these games. You just need to be able to hang. And defensively, I think we're superior. I mean, yes, they have Chris Jones, but our offensive line is our number one strength on the team.
I mean, maybe again we're sounding biased. You're saying Chris Jones they have. Well, we have Hassan Reddick, who had more sacks this year. Hassan Reddick. Plus, he did everything else, around on the football field. I think that was one of the things that stood out to me that Ed said there, and that was, obviously, like you said, Patrick Mahomes and then Jalen Hurts. That's the 1-2, and they're top heavy. They have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. So, hypothetically speaking, they have 2 of the 3 best players in this game. But then probably 4 through 20 is littered probably with a hell of a lot more Eagles than there are Kansas City Chiefs. So as a whole roster, talent-wise, the Eagles are the better talented team overall. It just so happens to be that they have the best quarterback in football on their team, Kansas City. So I think that was a really interesting or really smart point he made there that, they have Patrick Mahomes, but we are superior talented. That was not the case going into the Eagles Patriots Super Bowl back in 2018.
Absolutely not. And 2004, it was probably close. It was a lot closer.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to look at, expectations, but you got to get to a point where you're like, you know what? Let's embrace this and enjoy it. And you don't want to be biased, but listen, we're talking about a team that has basically defied every single expectation that we had. I mean, you even, in your bold prediction when we did our prediction show, I know you have it written somewhere when you said the Eagles were going to be 15-3.
15-2.
Or 15-2.
You add an 18th game to the NFL schedule?
And they were 14-3, and you had them going to the Super Bowl against the Raiders, and they're in the Super Bowl. So you were pretty spot on with your prediction.
I picked the right division for the AFC Super Bowl team. I actually had the Chiefs and the Raiders finishing with the exact same record. So I flipped the coin there on that one there. I was just deadly wrong on the Raiders. But
everyone missed on the Raiders.
Being deadly wrong on the Raiders is not as bad as this. I haven't put it up yet today. So I got to make sure it goes up at least once every single day till Super Bowl Sunday. So, at least I wasn't this wrong, like some other teams. Some other
is the biggest joke, man.
Other networks were a little bit more wrong than I was. You're talking about this and the talent, and Parcero's saying here the attention to detail, and again, just like everything else, Nick Sirianni. I know he's not the experienced coach that Andy Reid is, but you watch him talk yesterday, and again, the moment wasn't too big for him yesterday. More media members, more questions, more time. They've already started instilling their game plan. They're focused on practice this week, getting ready. They're going to practice. They've got access to the Arizona Cardinals facilities this upcoming week, where the Chiefs are using the University of Arizona or Arizona State, I forget, one of the college facilities. The Eagles have the Cardinals facility, but they're going to be more walkthroughs and film studies and then real practices. Their practices are happening today, tomorrow, Friday. They're going to be ready for this game now. And that's just staying on the same schedule. That he's not breaking the routine that they've had now for, when was July? Like 20-some weeks ago? That routine is exactly the same every single week for the entire year. And that, again, is where the attention to detail is going to come into play, where the more talented roster might be able to beat the most talented player in Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I've been confident, and I know, we're a podcast and it's hard, but listen,
extremely hard.
Bias is. I don't think it's a stretch to say that the Eagles should be favored in the Super Bowl. I just think they are. If you look at both of the teams, especially with Pat Mahomes being injured, which that you can't deny that. No. I mean, but he was impressive with the injury, even in both games. I mean, he won both games, and
Still Patrick Mahomes, the best player.
He's still able to scramble at the end of that game. So it's not like he's like not. It's not like he's not mobile. It's not like it's Brock Purdy back there that can't throw a pass. We're talking about Pat Mahomes. Yes, it's a challenge. I think any Super Bowl is going to be a challenge, regardless. You obviously are meeting a team that did a lot on their retrospective side to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's not like the Eagles are the only team that defied odds. I mean, a lot of teams defy odds every single season.
Agreed.
But it's the moment, and it's as you said. It's who will be better in the moment, who will be able to stay level-headed, who will make the less mistakes. And looking at these two teams, I mean, you got to be realistic. Jalen Hurts, up until this point, has been pretty much, I don't want to say perfect, but he doesn't make mistakes. He had 6 interceptions all season. He hasn't had an interception in the postseason. He holds on to the ball. The Eagles have not had a turnover in 2 games. Am I right? They haven't turned the ball over.
No, I don't think so. No.
So
hardware with that. I was like, I don't think so. I don't want to be quoted as saying I was wrong, but
I know I couldn't remember if they had a turnover
I'm pretty sure
in the Giants game. But yeah, so they don't turn the ball over. So if you don't turn the ball over and you have a better roster, you should win. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's always that case. I mean, Nick Foles.
You never know what's going to happen.
Example, 2017. We were on the opposite end. So,
I mean, perfect example is you should win, but you never know what's going to happen. Brock Purdy gets hurt. You never know what's going to happen. A bad call, a missed call here or there. Things can happen. But going into it, you have to be confident that this team is going to win. And we're going to get into more X's and O's next week as the weeks progress and things like that. And we've got more guests lined up coming on this show, like pretty much every day. Tomorrow we got Sean Brace coming on from Fox the Gambler. We got Brian Cameron coming on from Flipping the Birds and Philly Sports Network. I got Josh Reynolds from Liberty Ballers coming on next week. We got a long list of guys that are going to bring more to this conversation. But I'm pretty sure that all of these names we're going to bring in, guys that cover this team, media members, based out of Philadelphia, but still media members that try to stay as unbiased as possible, are all going to say the same thing, that the talent on this team is better. They are rightfully favored. And hype, I don't want to say it for sure, but the hype is real. They should win their second Super Bowl in 10 days. There really should be. We should not have to question ourselves on why this Eagles team is going to win a Super Bowl.
Absolutely not. I'm not questioning it.
I still got a little bit of doubt in me because it's that Philadelphia feeling still. I had a couple customers come into the pizza shop yesterday. Same thing. They're like, "How you feeling?" I'm like, "I feel good, but I feel like I shouldn't feel good." And they said the same thing. That's what the feeling is going on, at least in Kennett Square, is that the fan base is saying they're confident, but they feel awkward being confident at this point.
I mean, Hassan Reddick is on a mission.
Yeah.
The guy is on a mission. I would not be surprised. I mean, listen, I know a lot of times you're into betting, so you know a lot more about it than I do. I don't really know about betting, and I don't know about odds and what they mean and the whole, meaning that they have. Jalen Hurts has the best odds to be Super Bowl MVP, more so than Mahomes. So what does that tell you?
That tells me something.
What does that tell you, Phil? You're a betting man. You are a betting man.
Well, I'm still hoping that my MVP ticket for Jalen Hurts for the season cashes. He probably won't win the MVP. It'll probably be Mahomes. But I did pre-bet him MVP at 21 to 1. I also got a 22 to 1 Eagles Super Bowl ticket I'm waiting to cash to be the Super Bowl champions. So, yeah, I'm waiting to cash those tickets. But yeah, I mean, will I bet Jalen Hurts to win the MVP? I don't know. We'll have to see what all the odds are. But yeah, he rightfully so is favored because let's be honest, for as great as this team is, well, first and foremost, the MVP almost always goes to a quarterback, not any other position. Secondly, this Eagles team, for as great as they are talent across the board, they live and move based off of Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts has a bad game, the team slows down. If Jalen Hurts has a great game, everybody else flourishes. It's like, I don't want to say the system. He's not a system quarterback, but the Eagles are a Jalen Hurts system. Their whole entire game plan is centered around what Jalen Hurts is capable of doing. It's not like they're centered around a running back, an elite like Derrick Henry. The Titans are centered around Derrick Henry. the Eagles are centered around Jalen Hurts, and that's why he's the favorite, because if the Eagles win, it's because Jalen Hurts has that elite game.
Has anybody ever won an MVP in losing fashion? Has it ever happened in the NFL? I know in the NHL it's happened quite often. Where I know Ron Hextall won the, Conn Smythe for most valuable player when they lost to the Oilers. I don't think it has, but
I just typed it into Google. Let's see. It says the only Super Bowl MVP from a losing team is Chuck Howley. He was a linebacker of the Dallas Cowboys that lost to the Baltimore Colts in 1971. Hold on. It says he had 5 interceptions in the game. Is that possible? This is on Google. This is Bing. That's what it looks like.
Wow.
Well,
I guess that's why he got MVP. I mean, you could.
I can't read the whole article. It says Howley was an incredible player and had 5 INT ... So I don't know what the rest of that ... means. So, but yeah, I guess he was the only one to ever do that. There's that. All right, we're gonna wrap it up again. A special thank you to Ed Kracz for joining us from SI. Again, I say a lot of positive things to my guests, but there's certain few guys, and Ed Kracz is one of them. At Kratzy, Kracze, on Twitter. He does a great job writing articles. He's very unbiased, very fair with his assessments of a lot of people and things when he's covering the Eagles. So make sure you shoot him a follow. Shout out to him for his great work. And like I said to him, it's got to be an exciting moment for these reporters, him, Chris Franklin, all the guys that we talk to all the time that cover this team daily. They get to go cover the Super Bowl now. If the Eagles didn't make the Super Bowl, they'd be covering the draft and mock drafts and off-season numbers. But no, we get to cover 2 more weeks of actual football. So, make sure you shoot him a follow. Special thanks to him. And, I hope he gets to enjoy the moments as well. And we're going to wrap up Training the AM. 99% confirmed that Sean Brace will be joining the show tomorrow from The Gambler. I've always been a big fan of his. And we're going to talk betting, actually, just like you bring up there with the MVP odds. We'll talk a little betting with the Super Bowl as well as this Eagles team. This is Trending in the AM. I am Phil Stiefel. Make sure you do me a favor. You like and you subscribe and you comment, you turn notifications on, do all of that. Greatly appreciate that. Back tomorrow. Everybody have a great day. And like I said, I know the Sixers play tonight, but let's go Birds.
Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
And Philadelphia has it.